Hello and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. Today we are flying to Minmus this time. Minmus is the second moon out from Kerbin. First one being the moon with the U and the moon block or whatever it's called. But anyway, the first thing to note here is the different rocket designs. You can probably notice there's dropping fuel out radially in our engines, and this is due to fuel lines basically keep constantly refueling the inward rockets, or fuel tanks I should say, and so we slowly run out and then tilt over. Now I am actually going post-commentary doing this because it was incredibly boring. This is just a standard launch profile, as you can see. Also, if you saw that wobble there, that's a demonstration of why you shouldn't time accelerate while you're in the atmosphere. But, yeah, it can actually cause your ship to completely fall apart. It's not very good. It's generally not a good idea to use that. So anyway, what we're doing is pretty much the same as any old standard launch. We're gonna get out, we're gonna coast to our apoaps, and then we're gonna, perform our burn and pull our periaps out. And after that, the transfer to Minmus is pretty much the same as your transfer anywhere else. Or not anywhere else, but to the moon. We can use the same type of the same visual clue. And so another thing to note, however, is the orbit of Minmus is inclined. It doesn't line up with the others. So what you want to do, I actually did this a little bit wrong. You don't, well, for this orbit it works plenty well enough, but generally you want to do this differently. So I burned northward, which adds velocity upwards, which basically it inclines your own orbit. And so I did that until we were generally matched up with the inclination of Minmus. And then, of course, it was just a matter from there of waiting till we can see Minmus above the stars. Now if you see here, it's a very small little moon, and it's kind of difficult to see. You have to be looking for it, definitely looking for it. And right here, I think, right there I pointed to it. It's kind of difficult to see, but it'll stand out from the rest of the stars in the sky because it kind of twinkles a little bit, as well as moves across the sky. It doesn't stay stationary with the rest of the stars. So anyway, once again, a standard orbital burn, and you want to be really careful when you get out here. I wasn't as careful as I should have been, but it's very easy to overshoot this thing's sphere of influence, as I just did, and am now turning retrograde to fix that. So you'll get a little bitty sphere of influence capture, and I actually, due to having corrected that, or basically trying to eyeball the inclination change, I ended up a lot lower than the planet than I want it to be, and so I do a correctional burn. To avoid that yourself, you should simply fly out till you're, close to its orbit, and then, fly out halfway out here, and then burn to where you, kind of line up with it. But anyway, it's just very easy to miss this thing's sphere of influence, so be very careful if you're attempting this, that you, basically be very careful not to burn too, or not to time accelerate too quickly. So here in a few minutes, once we get the I pick a landing site. On Minmus, you want to land on one of the low-lying flat areas. They look kind of like lake beds, which may be what they are. I'm not sure within the lore. And I just demonstrated why you shouldn't time warp too quickly. I actually flew through the planet, which is, not too wonderful. And yeah. Okay, so next I think I just burned a little bit to get myself into one of those lake beds, but here in just a couple seconds we are actually going to swap over to the live commentary, and so you can hear what I was saying as we were landing. So that'll happen pretty much now. That looks close to good. I'm thinking we're going to be close to landing on the side of a mountain, so just a little bit of a burn this way to put us a little bit more towards the middle of this lake. I think that's about good. And landing on this thing is actually quite a piece of cake. Let's time warp up a little bit so that we can get in there a little sooner. Actually only 5,000 meters from touchdown, so we're going to be getting a low burn. Killing much of our velocity very, very easily, very, very quickly. This is not a difficult thing to land on, I'll say again. However, we are getting fairly close to landing, and we want to kill this a little bit faster than that. But once again, we're only at about 50% thrust. Rocks on the surface of the moon, of the satellite, I should say. And, well, we'll now try to get this thing on a straight down trajectory, because that's the easiest way to land. It may not be the most fuel efficient, but on Minmus we have more than enough fuel to get back. As you may have noticed, this is not our typical lander design. It is actually for a special little reason. It's not just a typical landing mission. Also, you should notice that we have 3 astronauts on this mission, rather than the one we had on our last mission. That's also for a specific reason. So anyway, our vector is pretty much pointed straight down. And now we just wait Actually, unfortunately we can't time accelerate, but we wait the additional 1,000 meters to the surface. Once again, Minmus has an extremely low gravity, which makes it actually a perfect mission for your first landing site, because landing on it takes very little thrust at all, and it's very easy to get on. It actually takes less fuel to land on Minmus, to do an entire mission to Minmus and back, than it does to go to the moon. Okay, we throttle up as we get fairly close to touching down. We perform what is typically known as a suicide burn. We burn out ton of fuel just before touchdown. I'm going to burn just a little bit more, bring this thing to about 3 meters per second as we touch down. And as always, landing on the light side of the satellite is the best way to go. And with a little bit of a bounce due to the extremely low gravity, we have landed. Now you ought to be able to notice what is special about this mission. We have brought with us a rover.
Now what we want to do first is get this thing out of the way and open the hatch, then decouple our clampotron. Now when I designed this, I designed it kind of hastily, and because of that I forgot to put the ladder on the pod. But that is not our only mistake. I also built this with clampotrons with the intention of being able to redock this rover with the main ship. Now, unfortunately, due to the way the game is put together, we can't actually see inside the rover, see the Kerbal nuts inside the rover. But anyway, we'll deploy wheels and we will kind of drive around. This is a mod known as the DimV Ant. It is a small electric-powered rover that you can take to different planets. And it's fun to use if you have, like, its main purpose is for bases. So if you've set up a little habitation, like a moon base or something, you can drive this to a moon base, and ideally you would have multiple bases that were decently far apart, and you could land these on the planet or satellite of your choice and use it to get back and forth between the different planets. Now, as I said, a little bit of hindsight is 20/20. I built this thing with the intention of being able to dock it back with the ship and take it back home. However, as you can see, the thrusters, or the engines, I should say, thrusters is such a mundane term. It's incorrect. As you can see, these things aren't going to let it drop this down, even if I, remove the landing gear, or raise the landing gear. These thrusters are not going to let me dock back with the main module, because we don't have enough room to go down to reattach this thing. At least it doesn't look like it. However, for your amusement, I will attempt to dock. So we will set this thing as a target, and well, let's see, how lined up are we? Quite horribly, actually. Let's see if we can get this any better. Okay, and it's difficult to see, but I think that's as lined up as we can get. Now, all we can do is open the hatch, and oh, one thing I did want to mention. I actually brought some large solar panels and put them on the either side of this, so if this thing runs out of electricity, we have a means of recharging it. But anyway, let's get Fredberg Herman back on out of this, and using his RCS, get back in the main stage. And unfortunately, since these weren't put on at the same time, they have to be manually lowered. And as I feared, this thing does not quite make it down to the crew hat, to the thing. I'm sorry. Does not quite have enough room to redock with this thing. However, it did do quite a nice job of lining that up, if I do say so myself. But anyway, it is now time to attempt the return to Kerbin. Now, thanks to our landing site, we actually can probably burn straight off the planet. However, it would be wiser to wait until our inclinations are not so misaligned. Ooh, jeez. Oh dear. Low gravity can cause some unexpected things. Unexpected problems. Anyway. You know what? We're not gonna wait. Waiting's for losers. Okay. Now, we can see the planet Kerbin on the horizon. And we can see from the map that we are actually in pretty much a fairly decent location to burn from. So what we want to do is... man, we can't get chase. Chase camera is nice because it helps you with whichever direction you turn, it'll actually be that direction. So, let's see. We're facing almost northward, so we want to turn sideways. Alright, let's try this. Wrong sideways. Okay.
And from there, it is a pretty simple and straightforward return. So, of course, you saw this last time. Returning from Minmus is pretty much the same as returning from the moon. We just escape its sphere of influence, and then use a little bit of a maneuver node to get our orbit down inside the atmosphere so we can make a safe return. And, once again, you get to hear the trippy, I think it's 8x speed music. Wonderful thing about this is it actually didn't change the pitch. So, it's pretty trippy sounding. But anyway, I actually had some commentary, live commentary for this, but it was pretty boring and it made the whole thing... If I had left this whole video at regular speed, it was something like 40 minutes long. And that's not really good. But anyway, we make our burn, and we're inside the atmosphere, and of course, as good practice would tell us to do, we delete the maneuver node now that we're done with it. And once again, we actually shot through the planet because we had our time warp set way too high. There's some sort of bug that makes the time warp not actually decrease if you're too high for some reason. So you can actually fly through planets. But anyway, standard landing procedure, except this time we have a drogue chute, and a drogue chute opens up before the others and kind of helps you slow down so that when the other two open, it's not so devastatingly huge G-forces that might even rip it apart. But the drogue actually ended up ripping the top of the capsule off. But anyway, that's a safe landing, and I'll see y'all guys next time.